Riveting content. Empowering your life. Welcome to The Sphere. This episode is sponsored by Houston Housewives of Finance. For more information on increasing your cash flow, becoming your own money manager, and to schedule your complimentary personal finance strategy, contact the Houston Housewives of Finance today at 1-844-700-4463. Looking to advertise? Join the Sphere's vast demographic reach of thousands of people all over the world. Send an email today to advertise@thesphere.tv or call us at area code 832-772-7789. Elite Dental Wellness. At Elite Dental Wellness, Dr. Ashandra Batiste understands that one of the biggest obstacles is dental fear. The vision at Elite Dental Wellness is to ensure every patient is treated with respect, ultimate care, patience, and love. Call us today to make an appointment at area code 713-789-8680.
Welcome back to Injustice on the Sphere Podcast Network, where we discuss the laws of the land and how they affect you, the people. I'm your host, Brennan Dunn. You can reach me on Twitter at LegalMind. That's mine with a Y, because there's always a question to be asked and answered. Joined today with the guy who always brings me joy, the debonair Damon Parrish. How are you, Damon?
I am feeling good. I have never been called debonair before, and I like it.
Well,
I like it.
There's a first time for everything, Damon.
It is the first time. Thank you.
Damon, happy to have you on the show. You
Thank
are
you.
filling in for Alicia today. She is out. And I think this might be the first time that you and I have been on the show, just the two of us.
I think so. So it's either going to be a really great show or a war. I don't know what it's going to be yet.
Well,
but we're going to.
it could be a great war.
It could be a great war.
So,
Like World War Great. I don't
well,
know.
since you already know how we do things around here because you are more than a guest,
I'm at home.
I guess we'll jump right on into this. Over in the Michigan area, 5 teenage boys in Michigan could face life in prison if convicted of second-degree murder for allegedly throwing a rock at a van that went through the windshield and killed a passenger. Back on October 18th, the victim, Kenneth White, and his friends were driving home from work, and these kids start throwing rocks over the overpass.
Right.
The rock goes through the passenger windshield, hits Mr. White in the face, bounces off and hits him in the chest, ultimately killing him. These 5 teenage boys are all, I think the one who's actually accused of throwing the rock is 17 years old. The other teens are 15. But they are each and every one of them being charged with second-degree murder. Now, I know if we go back to law school,
Depraved indifference.
depraved heart murder is that term that we learn, and that simply means that you do something without regard for human life and end up killing a person. Right. So it's not that you intentionally meant to kill somebody. It's not that you negligently, meaning accidentally, technically meant to kill somebody, but you did something with such a reckless disregard that you should have known that your actions would be likely to cause the death of another person. Absolutely. And you had no care for the human life predicated on your actions. One, is this a textbook definition of that? 2, is there something to be said about looking at life in prison for this type of murder?
So the answer to your first question is absolutely. I mean, Brennan, there cannot be a more textbook definition of depraved indifference than doing something you know can cause serious harm, like distracting people while they're driving, throwing rocks in the windshield. Now, did I think the kids believed the rocks would hit the windshield and kill a man? No, absolutely not. But I do believe that they thought the rocks might break somebody's window. Maybe they might see a car accident. It'd be a good time had by all. That is depraved indifference. If such a definition of crime exists in Michigan, that would be depraved indifference, and that is worthy of prosecution. Is it worthy of life? No. No, I do not believe so.
So what would be your limits on something like that?
Depraved indifference to me would be that's worthy of life would be if I shot a gun into a crowd, something I know that's designed to kill somebody, and I disregard my actions. I think the throwing a rock to a windshield can certainly kill someone, and I believe these kids have probably done it before, judged by their actions, and maybe it will definitely cause property damage. I think they were going for property damage. I don't think they were going for murder, and I don't think the act of throwing a rock at a car itself is one that's deadly enough to rise to life in prison. I mean, life in prison is life in prison,
right?
And
but they've taken a life, though.
Yeah, they've definitely taken a life, and they should be prosecuted if guilty, and they should do some time if guilty. I have never been a believer in eye for an eye. And I do not believe this one rises to the level of life in prison. Prison is hard, and so
give me a number. You're Judge Parrish.
All right. So of the 17-year-old, I think I'll do like 10 years, 15 max.
Okay.
Of the juvenile and whatever the system would be for juveniles, I don't know. A life has been taken, and so time should be forfeited. But I do not believe a life for life is warranted in this situation.
So, and that brings me to two more questions. The first being, you and I know what the law of parties is.
Correct.
And the law of parties, for those of you out there who don't know, basically means that if you are working in concert with somebody at the time that they commit a crime, guess what? You can be charged for the same exact crime as if you were the one committing the crime. So you're out with Samson and them, and Samson decides, you know what? Let's go rob this bank. And you're like, all right, I'll go with you. I'm not about to pull the gun though, but I'll go with you. And if I see somebody trying to walk off the door, I'll be like, hey, Samson, you need to catch this one. You have just enacted and conspired to commit this robbery. Right. And once you actually go with him, you are in the act and you are part of the robbery as if you were the one committing the robbery yourself. So in this particular case, even though there's only one guy who's actually thrown this rock, all of them are being charged with the same crime. So with these type of depraved heart murders, where somebody's taking the initiative to do it, should this be a law of parties thing?
No. At least in Texas, the law of parties as defined, no, because this definition of law of parties would include also the felony murder rule. Because I do not believe these kids set upon a design to kill them. I think we can all agree this was not an intentional murder. This was just reckless. All right. So in Texas, for the felony murder rule to kick in, you have to be committing one of several felonies. It can't just be any felony. Certainly throwing rocks at a car is not a felony. That's a criminal mischief. And if it was one, it would be a criminal mischief felony, which will never rise to felony murder rule. So I think the 17-year-old who threw the rocks for sure ought to be facing murder. Now, I'm not for sure if the felony murder rule counterpart in Michigan, if they even have one, is as limited as Texas or is more broad to include just any felony or any wanton act. But if it's like Texas, then these other juveniles should not be facing murder. Now, is that fair? No. Should they be facing murder charges? Yes. But as the law is defined, then if it's defined like Texas, they should not be facing any murder charge under the eyes of the law.
And the last question with this particular subject I want to ask is, you've got a 17 and 15. Those are the only two ages that we're dealing with here, none of which are 18 or above.
Right.
Should these guys be looking at time as adults?
No. Once again, I personally believe that it makes no sense in this country that you cannot buy cigarettes at 18, you cannot vote at 18, you cannot you can't stay out past curfew at 18, but you can face life in prison at 17. That doesn't make any sense to me. I believe the age of not consent, but the limit of 17 should rise to 18. And if you're old enough to buy cigarettes and stay out past curfew, then you can be charged as an adult. It makes no sense that the verse isn't true. So I don't think either children should be facing adult time.
So do you think that there are some crimes so heinous that a child should be tried as an adult?
Absolutely.
So what's the difference then? I mean, if we're talking, because one of the reasons why I believe that we have this hard line on ages usually is because we think about the cognitive growth of the child mind, and saying, well, they're not they haven't formulated enough cognitive ability yet to form the type of decision making abilities that an adult would. And for whatever reason, most states have put this cutoff at around 18, some at 16. But we have some general numbers there. But if you have, like, let's say, 11-year-old child that goes out and commits this ridiculously heinous crime, and you say, well, the crime itself was so egregious that we charge the child. Not necessarily that the child, it's more about the crime than it is about the child.
It is about the crime in my opinion, a certain way. So if this particular case to me is one that just screams juvenile behavior, it screams one of juveniles just not fully appreciating what they do and not thinking forward that this could have an unintended consequence of causing a person to wreck and kill somebody. Not even just hitting with a rock and they die from me hitting with a rock, just having a rock hit my trunk or my hood. That scares me. I panic. I swerve. It hits somebody. They hit somebody and boom. That's something an adult would think, maybe not a juvenile. However, there are some crimes that you can commit where I think you understood the right from wrong. Purely intentional crimes. I do not like sexual assault. I think sexual assault is one where you don't have to understand how your decisions might impact the other person in totality, but you can understand this is wrong. If you plan out a murder, if you go, there are situations in the country where juveniles have went and picked a lesser juvenile, like a 6-year-old, led him down a path and hit him with rocks till he died or drowned him because they want to see somebody die. Well, okay. In that circumstance, with that type of crime and that type of behavior, you have now, in my opinion, formed enough to expand to. But
it sounds like you're saying that if they're able to understand the nature of what they're doing, they should be charged as an adult. But when you have these same types of children that will commit a robbery or aggravated assault, and yet still they're still held to the standard of a juvenile, even though all the facts suggest that they knew what they were doing, they wanted to do it, and in some cases had no remorse about what they did. Is it just the nature of it being a murder that changes why we would look at them as juveniles versus adults for the purposes of criminal law?
I certainly believe the more heinous the crime, the more scrutiny you should pay attention to and decide whether to treat somebody as an adult or a child. Ag robbery is one that's, I myself have been a victim of ag robbery. It's a serious offense. However, I'm alive.
Did somebody steal your heart?
No. Well, she crushed my dreams though.
No.
But I'm alive. I had a gun pointed in my head. I had money taken, but I'm alive. All right, I got past it. All right, I have no lasting effects other than the memory of being a victim of ag robbery. I have never been sexually assaulted, and of course I'm alive. I've never been murdered. There are certain offenses that people carry forward forever, and when those things happen, a juvenile, in my opinion, can face adult charges. I'm not saying should. I think everything should be taken on a case-by-case basis, both for adults and children, because I do believe there are some adults at 19, 20 years old that can't formulate the opinion of where they are or have the same mentality as a juvenile. Not saying they should be in juvenile prison, but that should be brought into effect as well, that understanding. I just think there's certain crimes and certain intents and attitudes you put forward that forward at least the attention to see whether or not this child should be treated as an adult.
Fair enough. We're going to talk a little bit more about juveniles in just a second, but I just want to make sure we get these coins taken care of. This portion of the show is sponsored by Houston Housewives of Finance. Did you know that only 4 states in the United States offer financial education? 33%, or more than 77 million Americans, don't pay their bills on time. 39% of Americans carry credit card debt from month to month, and 39% of adults say that they don't have enough savings. Don't become one of these statistics. Let Houston Housewives of Finance advise you on increasing your cash flow and becoming your own money manager by scheduling your complimentary personal financial strategy. Contact Houston Housewives of Finance today at 1-844-700-4463 or email them at info@houstonhousewivesoffinance.com. Ask us how you can participate in a complimentary financial literacy workshop near you. Houston Housewives of Finance is the new face of the new age of financial services. Now we move over to Kentucky. We're in the same vein of juvenile discussion. A Kentucky Sheriff's Department deputy handcuffed an 8-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl at school, and a judge has ruled that excessive force was used in handcuffing the children, and it was an unnecessary reaction to their misbehavior. The American Civil Liberties Union filed a lawsuit on the children's behalf, and the judge made the ruling on this. Judge drew a line in the sand and said this conduct is unconstitutional. And we think that this is helpful in our efforts to advocate against the criminalization of children. Have we gone too far with policing children in school?
So I think everything is a case-by-case basis. I'm not for sure what this cop's intent was just if it was just to scare them, then I have no problem with that. If he,
even as a parent, you don't have a problem with it, with that particular cop taking a unilateral decision to quote unquote scare these children in that manner?
So, like I said, everything is in the case-by-case basis. I have to see more about what led to this to decide. Now, in Texas, you cannot charge a 10-year-old with a crime. I mean, a 9-year-old with a crime. They have to be 10 or over. So even if an 8-year-old committed murder, they cannot be charged with a crime, period. So certainly I would not advocate towards handcuffing them. But let's just say, for instance, this was just to show him, like, I don't know, what being a criminal could be like. And this is only for a brief moment. I don't know. You
think this was one of those PBS teaching moments?
Listen, I believe in corporal punishment. I believe in spanking children. I believe in timeouts. I think
you're a harsh man.
I'm a harsh parent. All right. But I believe that in certain respects, you can teach your child certain things. All right. And I'm not saying that this should be forever. And I'm not saying that this hasn't risen to a level of abuse. I don't know. But just on its surface, if this cop is just teaching him, like, hey, look, if you keep acting bad and breaking things and breaking the law, this could happen. Now, certainly if this child was just talking back or exhibiting what I would imagine to be normal 8-year-old behavior, then no, this does not warrant it at all, and it should not have never been done. I just need more information to make a judgment about this officer. I think in Kentucky, which is not very known for a liberal state, for a judge to draw such a line, that lets me believe that there was enough facts there for the judge to say, hey, guess what? This has gone too far. Either that or the color of that child was not one that was deserving of handcuffs. I don't know.
Well, let me add a couple of more tidbits into the story. The Officer Sumner, Deputy Sumner, was called in to deal with these children after they had misbehaved and hit teachers, encounters that ended with him handcuffing the children. This deputy had handcuffed the girl on 2 separate occasions in the fall of 2014 and the boy one time in the same period. Despite the school having a policy prohibiting school staff from handcuffing students. Now, what's interesting about this is that the teachers called the deputy in. So, which raises another question for me of who should really be the ones administering discipline to the students? Should it be the administration? Should it be the faculty? Or should it be a third party disciplinary tool, i.e. the police?
That's a great question. I can see it if I'm a teacher and I'm routinely being assaulted by children, we'll use that word, hit by children, that I would call for somebody else. One, because as a teacher, you're not going to lay my hands on a child and risk losing my license and everything else. I would call the principal, and the principal says, hey, you call the deputy, I'll call the deputy. If the deputy does something like this, that's on him, not on me. Based on what you just told me in the synopsis, I don't think this rose to a level of handcuffing a child. If this was a demonstration purpose, maybe. Like maybe this is what it feels like, but not so much like I'm trying to punish you. But based on what you said, something should have been done. And not just at the school, because if kids are hitting teachers at 8 years old, there's a problem at home also that needs to be addressed.
And I want to respond to that, but first I want to go ahead and speak to our Facebook Live people and say, first of all, thank you. Hello. How are you? We want you to subscribe to our show on all the major platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. Review our show on iTunes with constructive feedback. Share the Facebook Live post that you have with your friends and your family. And don't forget, we need those coins, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure to donate to our mission to bring enriched and inspiring content to you each and every week. You can always donate at www.thesphere.tv/donate. Facebook Live has been a pleasure and a joy. We hope that you continue to watch the rest of the show after it airs. It will be dropping at a website near you. Thank you.
See ya.
So when you're talking about the presence of police officers in schools, and let's be perfectly honest about these police officers and which schools that they're at.
Absolutely.
They are not in your suburban campuses where everybody gets to go off campus for lunch and come back, or where moms and dads come in routinely to eat filet mignon with the children. No, they are in those particular places where soy meat is the meat du jour every single day.
Soylent Green.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Tofu sandwiches.
Right.
And Frito pies are like elevated food.
Speaking of which, I don't know if one of our friends went to visit their child in school just on a whim for elementary, and they were serving the kids macaroni and cheese sandwiches. So it was 2 pieces of bread with macaroni and cheese in the middle.
That sounds disturbingly poor and disgusting. Surely tax dollars can be going to more, like, put the cheese, at least you can't even separate the cheese from the bread.
I mean, that's mad. And they are not poor. They make a lot of money, and they send the kids to a good school. I'm not for sure what happened there.
I mean, they might as well just start pouring syrup on some bread and calling it a pancake. But so going back to the point, though, you've got these police officers in a different type of school environment, those urban environments, those environments where you would call them, quote unquote, at-risk youth, yada, 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 in quote unquote dangerous neighborhoods. And I think what it ends up doing is to promulgate and perpetuate this ideology for the students that this is the type of life I live, where cops are an everyday occurrence for me, where I've got to fear the police and respect them in a certain type of way rather than interact with them and view them as my protector. Instead, they're my enforcer. And I think that particular type of ideology, when it's pervasive every single day as a child, all you're doing is adding to the problem rather than, I mean, people want, they want this new type of idea where they have neighborhood policing and they want to interact with police officers and make them look human. But how do you make them look human when they are in your face every day, watching every move that you make? It's almost like mama with a belt. Of course, you're going to fear mama with the belt, right, not mama who's going out and loving you every day.
Well, so one, I am a fan of community-based policing when done right. But like most things in this world, like communism, it is never going to be right. And it's on paper looks great, but in reality, it doesn't work. Community-based policing that you're speaking about only works if the cops make themselves part of your community and not above it. If they see themselves as one with the school. So they come to the school without the gun, without the baton, without the handcuffs, and blue jeans and a shirt, and say, hey, I'm a cop, I'm here to hang out, and I'm not your enemy. But when you come to a school or a situation with full riot gear, look at me and expect and treat me as if I'm a criminal or less than or an animal, then I'm going to be one. I definitely agree with you that certainly cops with guns and nightsticks and handcuffs do not belong at elementaries. I don't know what situation other than an active shooter will require such a response from law enforcement. And I definitely will take a step further and say my initial response towards a cop arresting an 8-year-old is to say it's wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying this one is wrong because I don't know, but if you were to make me decide right now, like pick a side, I would say It's definitely wrong. It's definitely wrong.
And this is where we have to agree.
And this is ridiculous that a officer, we all grew up in high schools that had cops walking around in them, or at least I had a cop walking around in school.
I had a dare cop named Officer Friendly.
No, we had cops.
I don't know if we had the same cop.
No, I mean, it was, I guess he dared us to do something. I don't know. We had cops walking around, HISD and A-Leaf ISD cops walking around, and you never felt like these cops were your friends, and they never act like they were your friends. You always looked at them as like the guy who's trying to get you or the lady who's trying to get you. And it was never one like this person could be my friend, or not even my friend, just my equal or somebody I can go to. More like, okay, when they come around, be quiet and sit still, else they'll try to bother you. And sometimes they did bother you. We even had a cop in middle school.
What school did you go to? What hard knock off the set of the substitute school did you go to? I can't even talk though. We had fights every day at one of my schools where they were cholos versus the negros. So it was
so you need
a fright.
To say the least. Your school.
But and it's hard for me because I think that one thing that this really highlights is, especially when you talk about the teachers went straight to the police for 8 and 9-year-olds, where you bring a gun to a fist fight.
Exactly.
so to speak. And the system does this, where, you know, and this kind of correlates to the adult world, where we have the cop who ends up pulling a gun on the guy who shrugs his shoulders, says, "Man, get off me." Well, now it's time for me to pull out my gun and shoot you, because one, you haven't respected authority. Two,
you're bigger than I am.
You're bigger than I am. Three, you've been trained to know that any type of person that looks like this particular person is a threat. And it starts off in the school at 8 or 9, and it matriculates up into adulthood. It's bothersome and it's problematic.
I agree, and it's disgusting. I agree. I totally agree. And I can't see why the school would even allow for a cop to come to their school. And the fact that there's a policy in this school that says cops don't handcuff kids, to me, is already an issue. Because like most situations, policies don't exist until something happens to make the policy exist. And I think that's even an issue. That there has to be a better way. In fact, I know there's a better way to do this. Children at 8 years old aren't hardened criminals. They are easily controlled. They can talk a lot, and you can hit them. But I mean, there are so many models and methods out there of dealing with juveniles that teach you do not use combative or overly aggressive behavior with juveniles, because it reinforces whatever they feel to make them lash out. It makes them lash out more, and it makes them hardened to the person who is giving that authority, be it whoever it may be.
And I feel like I'm back in New Orleans listening to Juvenile. So we're going to continue with this particular train of thought. But first, I want to let you guys know that this portion of the show is sponsored by The Sphere. Are you starting your business and looking for a place to advertise? Do you have a need to reach out to thousands of people across the world to build your brand or sell your product? If so, get your product placement and advertising needs handled right here at The Sphere. We offer a wide variety of content delivery platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. Plus, we have a vast demographic reach within the United States as well as modern countries across the globe. Our enriched content and inspiring dialogue, coupled with your strategic ad, is surely to hit the mark every time. Call us today at area code 832-772-7789 or send an email over to advertise@thesphere.tv. Now, we go over to Cook County, which is the Chicago area. Still talking about juvie in them. A teen girl was charged with killing 14-year-old India Martin back in 2014. She was charged as a juvenile. However, she requested that a jury decide her fate in this particular case. And under Illinois state law, only juvenile defendants with repeated or violent criminal histories can be eligible for jury trials. The teen charge had no previous convictions, so a judge is denying her request for a jury trial. It's interesting because they're saying that first-time, and this is the court's opinion, first-time juvenile offenders charged with first-degree murders are not similarly situated to recidivist offenders charged with different crimes and prosecuted under different statutes with distinct legislative purposes. When we say, well, what's recidivism? That's going back and doing the same thing again, that you're a returner, that you are habitual. This is the most ass-backwards interesting piece of legislation that I can think of. One, you're charged with a criminal offense, and constitutionally, every American citizen has the right to a criminal trial by a jury of their peers.
Not really.
That's what most people are believing.
Correct.
In this, and obviously there are some caveats that are carved out with this.
And juveniles are one.
And I don't really think that juveniles should be one, especially when you're looking at charging them for, like you said before, there are different types of crimes.
Right.
And you talk about something like murder, guaranteed, I don't want one person deciding my fate. I need a multitude of people to listen to what I have to say, and I need to find at least one of you 12 people that is going to hear me out and say, you know what, there might be some reasonable doubt here, because it's always better for 12 to hear me than just one.
Especially if that one may be biased against you just because they're used to hearing your story all the time, or or most judges, in my opinion, first of all, I would never have a bench trial, and I like a lot of judges I work with, but I'd much rather go to 12 than 1.
Right. And one of the dissenters, Justice Ann M. Burke of the Illinois Supreme Court, says, I believe juveniles charged with criminal offenses that would be a felony if committed by an adult should have the right to a jury trial pursuant to the guarantees of the Illinois Constitution. And I think I'm parroting almost what she says on this. I don't see how we can carve out, I mean, what makes the difference in terms of equal protection under the law? What makes the difference between an adult and a juvenile?
So this is one of those things, in my opinion, that spins on legalese, legal fiction, that outside of being a lawyer, you don't know, don't care, and frankly, find frustrating. All right, so in Texas, and I imagine same thing in every other state, juveniles aren't found guilty of crimes. A juvenile charged with a crime is not found guilty of that crime. Even if they did it, they might be found a juvenile in delinquent conduct or a juvenile in need of supervision, right? 2 different standards, but they're not found guilty. So because you're not found guilty of the crime, I think that they are parceling out or separating that from adults who are in fact found guilty. In Texas, a juvenile charged with a crime that remains in the juvenile courts, that juvenile is not found guilty. A juvenile does not have the conviction in the sense that we have for adults. They just have juvenile in need of delinquent conduct or in need of supervision. And those trigger certain types of punishments, but even the punishments for juveniles for like a murder in Texas would not be the same for an adult. Everything is sentenced different, everything's done different. And so I can see how if you are guaranteed a right to a jury for a criminal charge, in which case you face a conviction, that not being given to a juvenile who is not facing a conviction at all.
You know, everything you just said sounded very pleasant to my ears. However, I'm going to call bullshit. And here's the reason why. Because on one hand, they say these juvenile defendants aren't entitled to a jury, and for all the reasons that you may be citing. On the other hand, they then say, well, they're not similarly situated to a habitual. Just because I haven't done it more than once. Well, you've done it twice. All right, bring in this jury.
So that might trigger, in Chicago, the recidivism issue might trigger another legal law that requires you to be treated as an adult. So where now you are facing a conviction and not necessarily facing a subset juvenile carve out. I don't know, but I will say this though. I think in any criminal situation, be a juvenile or adult, you should have a jury trial. You should be allowed to have one. And so I'm not in support of the Chicago law that says juveniles don't get jury trials if they are not repeat offenders. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying I can see how they can have that silly legal fiction that denies somebody a jury charge, a jury for their criminal charge. The one bright line to this I can see would be if this young lady is found guilty of murder as a juvenile, she would not have a murder conviction, and that will trigger certain protections for her as a juvenile that she would not have the benefit of as an adult. That's the only bright line I can see to this in her situation as far as not having a jury trial.
Well, I kind of want this to go to the Supreme Court so they can take a look at this and maybe see if we can have a more standardized version of this particular type of law. I don't know if that should be left up to states to decide.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if the Supreme Court can decide it also. I mean, that's a state right. It's a state issue.
Well, the Supreme Court likes to decide a lot of things for the state, so
only when it impacts constitutional rights.
Well, I mean, I think this would be a prime candidate for a constitutional question. Since
what constitutional issue is at play here?
Well, I mean,
it's not equal protection.
Well, there is a constitutional right to a trial by jury, though, for criminal actions,
criminal charges, criminal convictions. But if a juvenile is not facing a criminal action, then that right disappears.
But we both know that state legislature decides how they're going to coin something and phrase it in terms of whether we're going to designate it as criminal or not. And just because you say it's not a duck, doesn't mean it's not a duck. When you put these children in a juvenile detention center, just because you don't call it prison doesn't mean that it doesn't equate to prison. And I think that the Supreme Court can say, well, look, you may not call it what it is, but we both know what it is. Ergo, we're gonna make the appropriate adjustments.
In doing so and not calling something a crime, you're also giving this person an added benefit that they're not getting if it was called a crime.
Well, just
so
like
you're giving them record protection. You're giving them the ability to potentially have this sealed on their record.
you can still do that by virtue of them being a juvenile. You can legislate just about anything as long as it's constitutional. There would be nothing unconstitutional about saying that you're going to mandate that they are given jury trials, while also saying if they are convicted as a juvenile, then guess what? It doesn't go on their record.
So I agree with you, but I guess we've kind of segued or transitioned a little bit to what a Supreme Court can take up on this case. And I don't believe that there's a Supreme Court issue here. This to me is just a state's issue, and it's a dumb issue because I agree that this lady should have a jury. I do not see why she can't have a jury trial. I do not like the idea of having someone from afar judge us. That's why we all have a guaranteed right of a jury trial, and I love the jury trial. So I agree with you. I just don't think that there's any issue here at play that can rise to the Supreme Court level, and she is getting a benefit from having this remain in the juvenile system.
But again, you're talking about the system. There's nothing about what I just said that says it has to be taken out of the system, and you got to look at. Let's take for instance when you're talking about asset forfeiture. Asset forfeiture is a quasi-criminal action. They have created this terminology for this particular type of lawsuit / criminal action, saying, well, it has just enough criminality in it. And we say, well, what is a asset forfeiture case? Well, if you're going out, let's say you've got some drugs on you. Allegedly, the cops believe that you have the drugs. They seize the drugs or what they believe to be drugs. And you know what? You got $300 on you too. I feel in my heart that $300 is somehow connected to these drugs. We're going to go ahead and seize that money too. The money becomes its own criminal defendant.
Correct.
In a case, and you as the person who had your property seized have to then go ask permission for the government and say, hey, government, can I have my criminal defendant back? And that criminal defendant, the money has to go through its own proceeding. It is tried as if it was a person, and you being the conduit through which they do it. And they've said that, well, it has the auspice of both criminal and civil matters to it, because on the civil side, well, it's not a real person. We're talking about money here, and it's actually the taking of property. So it's a civil action. However, it is based and predicated on a criminal act. So we're going to, one, you can get a jury if requested.
Correct.
2, it has to follow probable cause, which is a criminal standard. And so, but it still goes through this civil scrutiny from the legal standpoint. They can carve out whatever they want to do. And I liken that to say that just like they carved it out for these quasi-criminal asset forfeiture cases, they can do it for these juveniles.
I agree. But once again, those are states' issues. I bet you there's a state out there that doesn't allow jury trials for asset forfeiture. As dumb as that state is, I bet there is one. I don't think it rises to a level of federal issue yet.
I don't know. But what I do know is that there's a new study out that is saying that police body cams make little impact on use of force. Who knew? Well, except us. And there's a lab in D.C. The team of behavioral and data scientists put together this particular study. The study included 2,200 of a department's 3,800 officers, making it one of the largest and most rigorous studies on the issues to date. They tracked the rollout and impact of body-worn cameras in the nation's capital over a 2-year span. And over that 2 years, over that course, they said that the body cams had little to no effect on the civilian complaints that were coming in. And they thought that it would decrease the police use of force by at least 95 incidents or increase it by up to 250 incidents per 1,000 officers. And unfortunately, it didn't do any decreasing at all, which to me goes to show you are who we thought you were. There's nothing that is going to change who you are as an officer, as a person.
I agree with you, but I also think that it shows another problem. All right, everybody thought that the police would do their dirty business in the cover of darkness, and that's how it always was, and would not bring it to light for fear of what would happen if it was brought to light. What we're seeing now is it's being brought to light, and those in charge, justices, judges, of enforcing against them are not. And so what we're seeing now is cops lying. We had that whole summer where they were just killing black folks wholesale and lying and making up stuff and being caught lying, and yet nothing's happening to them. The most it is they're just getting fired. And when an officer gets fired, all that says is, unless they take their license, okay, you can't work for my agency, but if you're in Harris County, you get fired from Constable 8, you can go to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, HPD or sheriff, and still be in Houston. Does that make sense? You just switch agencies. So what we're seeing now is that the people, the light shone upon them, we see it, and those in charge of fixing it are not. And there is the next battle. Body cams will for sure work. They are for sure telling people what minorities have said for the longest time. We are targets. They are overly aggressive with us. They are abusive, and it needs to stop. What's happening now is people are seeing it, and so those officials who don't care will start getting the brunt of that if we can get the ability to sue them and make them care with the dollar.
I tell you like this, if you put up a barrier but then give somebody the tools to overcome that barrier, you have done nothing but keep the status quo. And I'll get more into that in just a second. Before I do, I just want to go ahead and say that this portion of the show is sponsored by Elite Dental Wellness. At Elite Dental Wellness, our vision is to create a welcoming practice that will offer exceptional dental care and a lifetime of dental wellness. We are committed to the finest possible oral care and the overall health and well-being of our patients. Elite Dental Wellness is built upon a foundation of integrity, expertise, and service. Through our commitment to modern dentistry, continuing education, and friendly atmosphere, we strive to make our patients feel that they are part of our family. Dentistry can be scary, daunting, and uncomfortable. Dr. Baptiste and her team work tirelessly to ensure your comfort. Make your appointment today with Dr. Ashandra Baptiste at Elite Dental Wellness at 713-789-8680. So what I mean by overcoming this boundary is, let's say, for instance, you've got, they put those shock collars on a dog to keep them within this imaginary fence. Well, you put the collar on the dog, but then you give the dog the ability to turn down the shock value as they go through that barrier. Guess what? If they give them the ability to turn it off, they're just going to go ahead and do what they want to do. And I equate that to the system that we have in place with the prosecutor's office, with the indictment process, and with the jurors themselves, who, even if you get so far as to charge the officers with wrongful conduct, they then get to walk away scot-free 9 times out of 10. You have taken away all the shock value and that the pressure of having someone watch you from a camera is putting on you. So at one point, you might have been, when you first put it on, you might have been, well, I got to act right because I got a camera that's going to watch every damn thing I do.
Now you don't care.
But then I accidentally forget I got one on. I go beat somebody's ass for it. I get charged, and they say, oh, you're an officer. No one knows these split-second decisions that you have to make. We understand that you have a hard job. You're free to go. Beat some more ass, please. Well, damn, I guess this camera thing really isn't putting a hitch in my step. Let me go do what I need to do. And that's what I mean by we haven't done anything to fix the problem if the people at the end of the race are still letting you just skate on by.
Well, so I agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why I very much like District Attorney Kim Ogg.
Which is the Harris County District Attorney.
She's our sitting DA right now. And different from her predecessors is she's actually active in policing cops, right? So before in Harris County, we had this grand jury system for cop shootings that did not exist for any other person but a cop. All right, so in Texas, if you're charged with a felony offense and it goes to the grand jury, your case has to be presented to the grand jury. You have no rights there. You have no right to counsel, no right to a presentation, no right to a defense. That prosecutor can go into that grand jury, say whatever they want to say. It's completely secret. Without a court order, you don't get the transcripts. And even with that, you have to fight for it. And they can get you indicted or not indicted, and it's their ball. all previous administrators but Kim Ogg have, for cop shootings in Harris County, will allow the cop to come testify in person in front of the grand jury with their lawyer standing next to them to advise them on their rights. Will allow them to have a presentation that no other defendant can have, including having his lawyer there, a pre-screening of the questions, and basically allow the cop to come in and give, without scrutiny, their version of the events, which led to the officer shooting, which of course resulted from a time period of almost 10 years or some effect like that, no cops being indicted on a shooting in Harris County. Made no sense. She has stopped that policy, and she's actively policing police. And that is the next step, not the last step, but the next step in getting police force under control. And it also is one of the first steps in helping community-based policing works. If I can see that you are also equal to me and liable to the same laws I am, and you see that, then we have to work together, and you can't try to lord over me. And when we work together, that will itself make the community-based policing work and make the community safer.
I got this, and I believe that it's training to me isn't really the overarching issue. There are two overarching issues to me. One is how we choose which officers will become officers. I think that the scrutiny needs to go.
I think training is a big part in it.
I think the psychological evaluations, your history, all those things go into it. I mean, I feel like the same way they do some of these if you're going to work for the NSA, they do this ridiculous scrubbing background.
Have you tried?
What?
What?
If I told you, I'd have to kill you.
You can try to kill me. I got my NSA training, so I'm
you
good.
know, there's a lot of power in this here index finger. But anyway,
I don't know. I've seen it in action, and it sucks.
so pause. Anyway, there's the same type of scrutiny that a high government official like that will go through. I think you need that for your police officers, and it's. Then you say, well, why do we want to put that kind of resources to it? Because people keep dying as a result of picking the wrong people. That's one. The other one is the fact that I don't think training is fine, but the consequences need to be better. And that goes back to my discussion about both charging and convicting. I can be trained. You can tell me the effects of a fire burning me all day long. You can tell me how it burns, how hotly it burns, at what degree it burns. But if I touch my hand to that fire, I get to feel that kind of heat on me. And you know what? I don't want to see that again. I don't want to feel or see that again. If we're actually convicting, making these consequences a reality instead of a myth and a potentiality, then I think you start to see a change.
But that could be part of training. So to the first step, one, I don't think it'd be great to have that level of scrutiny for NSA, Secret Service, CIA, for local law enforcement, but you can't do it. Those agencies, those three I just listed, get applicants from across the country, 10,000 or so a day, to try to get within them. They have who knows how many, but let's just say each agency employs 5,000 people. That means that in a given year, they're receiving 15 to 20 times their number of applicants for 5,000 people. That allows them to be highly selective, and the nature of what they do requires that high selectivity. You don't have that for law enforcement. You have, in fact, HPD right now begging people to apply. You have certain agencies, like for a while, Dallas PD would pay you $10,000 to relocate from your city to Dallas to be a law enforcement, to be in a Dallas Police Department. And so when you have that, unfortunately, you have people being let in with lesser standards. I do agree with you that there should be some psychological testing and some scrutiny, but I'm just saying you can't have that level of scrutiny. And I know you're speaking in hyperbole, but you just can't have a really stringent scrutiny when you're also begging for people to fill your position. That's one. Two, training. Training can be what you want it to be. In every county, municipality, if you're going to be a firefighter, part of your training includes feeling that fire. It includes you going into a firehouse and removing part of that gear. Now, obviously, it's controlled, and you're not putting yourself into the fire, but you have to see what it's like to be in there without your helmet and get that smoke in your face.
Should we put them in a controlled prison and have a grown man come up and say, I want your cornbread?
You know what we should do? you can train them, one, to have a culture of respect. You don't teach cops that you need to establish dominance and control people all the time.
That's a real altruistic way of thinking.
But you have to train it first. Like, it's altruistic, but it has to be done. You have to train cops that you are part of the community. If you're going to do community-based policing, you have to train them for the community. And two, I don't know if they do this because probably not in Harris County, but you have to actually show them with cops coming in or former cops coming in and saying, hey, look, I got busted and I did 5 years TDC. It may just be like, it may not be because no cop will come in and say
straight.
that. Hey man, you can train them and like, listen, there are consequences to your actions. You will face this.
Should we name it Police to Crooked?
We should name it something.
I don't know.
Really, if we get a proper DA, and we have one in Harris County, but if that mandate follows through and the police are actually policed and cops can see, hey, look, you can be part of the community and police. You do not have to be this vigilante out there roughing up bad guys and coming from Sugar Land or the suburbs, driving into the heart of the city to fight this war on drugs that's asinine, but actually be community-based policing. I think it can work, and it has to begin in training. If you don't start it from the beginning, you can't ask for it in the end.
Well, there's something else I want to talk about on the criminal side, but I think I want to change gears and talk about something a little bit more lighthearted. We can always get to it next week, and maybe let's talk about something a little bit more jovial, like racial discrimination.
Oh, yeah, I love discrimination.
NAACP has issued a warning for African-American travelers to be careful when they fly American Airlines, saying that it has noticed a pattern of disturbing incidents reported by African-American passengers specific to American Airlines. Said the incident suggested corporate culture of racial insensitivity and possible racial bias, and advised travelers to exercise caution. Now, quite honestly, I feel like we just need to all pitch in and buy a soul plane. And I feel like if Snoop actually he gave us the roadmap to how it should be done.
It was awful.
Why can't we just follow through?
I would not. I would rather ride in American Airlines on their worst day than Soul Plane.
Oh,
that being
got
said,
to be kidding me.
That being said, I say we need to honor that. We need to honor that travel restriction. I'm a firm believer, and this is not just about race, it's anywhere. I do not shop or spend money where I'm not welcomed. If you're going to give me bad customer service, either because I'm black, because you're having a shitty day that morning, because you don't like tall people, because you don't like men, because you don't like straight men, or because you don't like children in your store, that's great. Thank you for letting me know that, and I will leave with my dollar and go someplace else. All right? If American Airlines doesn't want black dollars, let's not spend them there. And it was funny to me because one time the NAACP issued a travel restriction for like Mississippi or Alabama, and I'm like, well, duh. Like, duh. Why would you? I purposely try to drive around those states when I drive places because I don't want to be there. If they don't want me there, I don't want to be there. It works out both ways. American Airlines, if they don't want our dollar, then they shouldn't get it. And if they have a culture of insensitivity towards blacks and minorities, boycott it. Let's show them where it matters the most. And a financial boycott has been one of the most successful protests in this country. You
know, and this is by no means me caping for American Airlines because I've only flown them like once or twice, and I had to pray each time as the plane was in the air that it didn't just drop out the sky. But I think that when we talk about boycotting a company, we have to be cognizant of if it's employees that are being discriminatory or if it's the company that's being discriminatory. Because to me, there is a distinct difference between the two. We all I don't want anybody because Cousin Pookie is an idiot saying, well, you know what? Brennan and them are idiots.
Right. I agree. And I think hopefully I haven't seen this I don't know what their scrutiny is to issue this warning. My hope is it's not just a one-time incident. It has to be.
They cited to 4 different incidences, specifically one involving a black woman who was removed from a New York-bound flight after she complained that her seat was changed without consent. Another one saying a black woman and her baby were removed from a flight from Atlanta to New York after she asked for their stroller to be retrieved from checked baggage before she left the plane. We had one where involving a black woman who had booked first-class tickets for herself and a white companion. At the ticket counter, the black woman was moved to coach while her traveling partner was allowed to stay in first class. And on another occasion, on a flight from Washington, D.C. to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, a black man was forced to give up his seat after he responded to disrespectful and discriminatory comments directed toward him by two unruly white passengers. And so they said that, I guess in all these instances, it's the African-American passenger who suffers.
Well, so far, for the first three, it seemed like black women. So I feel sorry for the black women.
Oh, yeah. Well, they hold the burden for the shield in which we fight behind. Black women, we salute you.
We salute you. Sisters.
There should be like one of the. Weren't we supposed to be having like
the more you know or PSA?
Sound effects now. So I wanted something.
We needed something right here between us, and right here, just like a black woman that comes shining through. And we say that.
Producers, y'all got to get on the job now, producers.
We at the Sphere TV are going to get on this, and we're going to celebrate our black women the right way real soon. So to that effect, what I would say to you is this: like I said before, if they don't want our money, let's not give it to them. Mm-hmm. Those 4 incidences to me don't sound like enough to warrant a boycott.
It's just a warning right now.
Well, warning, but
be advised. You may or may not.
That to me is a boycott. But if let's say, for instance, and this didn't happen, let's say, for instance, last year, 6 black people, male and female, flew in American Airlines, and 4 of them received that type of impact. Mm-hmm. Then there we go. Now it's time to step up. But if this is 4 across a multitude, then I would need to see that number mm-hmm. compared against the total number of black passengers, compared against white passengers, to see if we are in the same line as everybody else. And maybe American Airlines deserves a boycott, not for being racist, just for being straight up shitty and just having bad customer service. Like I said, you don't have to give me a reason why you don't want my money. If you don't want it, you don't want it. I'll accept any reason you give me, and I will gladly not give it to you. If I don't fly a lot, and so far I've only flown Southwest, and they've been pretty good. Haven't any issues with them, so it's kind of where I fly, other than the planes are really small and cramped. And if I guess I was flying international or going to first class, and I have to bump airlines. But hell, we can either fly American Airlines or go United, and United is like beating people up. And they were almost killing somebody.
But I'd rather go with the devil I know.
Because
then what's left for me? Spirit? No. But anyway.
It's always Frontier.
That's like Spirit on ice.
Delta?
But Delta costs $4,000 for a trip from Houston to Dallas.
Well, hey, but and that $4,000 is gonna be great.
Well,
you get what you pay for, sir.
Well, I'll pay for discrimination. But so we're gonna move through these kind of quickly. We're running out of time. But the Trump administration announced an end to the Affordable Care Act cost-sharing payments for pharmaceutical drugs. The notice states that the executive branch has determined that those payments are not funded by the permanent appropriation for refunding internal revenue collections or by any other appropriation. In essence, this is a strong-arm effort, I believe, by Trump to get his side to force through some legislation on removing and revising the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. I think it's kind of deplorable that you would strong arm in such a way. I mean, what you're doing is you're now forcing, because what this particular initiative was, it was a cost sharing initiative, which means it's a subsidy.
Right.
The insurance carriers have to pay a lot for these pharmaceutical drugs, and the government says that, well, we know it's expensive, and we know we don't want to pass on the burden of the cost to the people, so we are going to subsidize that cost and help you out with that cost, and for paying for those making up to 250% less than the federal poverty line. And what we're going to do is take away that funding that helps you insurance companies cover those costs. Now insurance companies, guess what? As a private company, gets to say, well, if you're not going to help us, we're definitely not about to give these pharmaceutical drugs out for free, or we're not going to take on that burden. So we're going to they're going to either pass it on to the consumer or discontinue those type of drugs for a certain type of person. And all that does is hurt the person, the people.
Absolutely. And, but we all know that's been part of his initiative from the Gump. He campaigned on ending Obamacare. He campaigned on ending it, and in every chance he had, they could not. I think he learned just that how hard it is to be president. And making outlandish statements on the campaign trail and following through aren't the same thing. It's just so interesting to me that a Republican Congress and executive branch can't pass a single piece of legislation. That lets me know that either A, they really didn't want to pass it, they really didn't want to change it, they just wanted a scapegoat, or B, they're just dumb and they can't figure out how to write a bill that works. I think the other problem is that they are writing bills that work for their for the corporations and not for the people, and the people are telling them, hey now, this ain't gonna work for us. Like, I get it, I want to keep my job, I'm pro corporation also, but at the end of the day, I can't afford these meds. And funny thing is, big drug companies want the subsidy because if you don't subsidize it, they don't buy it.
Right, and they want to get paid. They want to make every dollar that they can.
Yeah, it makes no sense on their end to not get the subsidy, because then you prescribe me a pill and I can't take it.
So no one wins in this situation.
No one wins, and this is just Trump being Trump, and he's forcing. And in one situation, I understand what he's doing, and he's forcing the legislative to make a bill that hopefully works and taking away all the protections.
So that brings me to the question: is this a smart move by Trump to force their hand?
It's smart by Trump, because Trump has always been against Obamacare. He has been, and he's always campaigned against it. So now he's making strides. Look, Trump is looking for 2018, his Congress, and 2020, his reelection. He's looking to say, hey, look, I told you what I was going to do.
So is this one of those situations where the parent says, this is going to hurt you, but it's for your own good? Is this really a for your own good type of thing?
If you believe that the Obamacare was not legal, if you believe that a better situation exists, then this will be for your own good, because this hopefully, at least in Trump's mind, is going to force the Congress to act and make a bill that works. It sucks that he's sacrificing lives to do so. But let me just say this. I know I have a lot of opposite opinions from you. I am not in support of Trump and anything he does.
I don't know. Your hair would tell me otherwise.
I'm not endorsing it. My hair says Camus Bell, apparently, but my mouth is telling you I don't like Trump. And I'm telling you, like, I'm not in support of this, but I understand what he's doing if you agree with him. And if you think that this jumpstart will kick in and make them pass a bill, then what he's done is brilliant, if you believe that.
Well, fair enough. And I'll let that be your last word. You got to promise me. I wanted to get to these other issues, but I don't think we have enough time for them today. So you have to promise me that you're going to come back next week to talk about this. One being the federal appeals court grants teen immigrants right to abortion. And the second being that
how old is this teen?
Teenage. The second being that there is nationwide opposition to a concealed weapon law that would span across all 50 states.
Why?
Well, we'll talk about it. Stay tuned next week, ladies and gentlemen, for more.
You get to promise me that if I'm here, Alicia will be here, so we can have a debate about abortion.
You know, no one knows Alicia's heart or thoughts, but I can promise you that I will ask her. All right. And I will promise you that I will tell her that she has been requested
by Cousin Damon. So
by cousin Damon.
I want Cousin Alicia over here, and we will have this debate.
Y'all going to be cutting up, cousins. But, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you've enjoyed the show. Damon, it's been my pleasure to have you on the show once again. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our time here on the Sphere Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brennan Dunn. You can reach me on Twitter at LegalMind. That's mine with a Y, because there's always a question to be asked and answered. Damon, where can they reach you?
At Lawyer Parrish, right there just send me a tweet or whatever it's called, and I will respond.
A twit. Are you like 93 and a half?
My birthday's coming up.
Gosh. Anyway, Slave Damon. Here we go.
Slave.
I mean, that was
free, sir. I'm a free man.
You know, only slaves continue to profess that they're free. But anyway.
No, free man says they're free. Slaves don't know they're free.
Your last name should be Freedman. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's our time. Hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.